changes. We've seen this big summit meeting on YouTube. We've heard about it. Howard wants A-list guest, and he's got this PowerPoint that he's put up in his crazy office. What was it like just for you as there was these changes? We all have heard of MARCI coming through. I don't know if she dealt with you guys as much, but what was it like for you?
Honestly, it felt like the beginning of the end. It felt odd. It felt everything that the show was great for was being changed. And we all were sort of looking at each other, rolling our eyes, going, what the hell is happening?
Doug, was that across the board? News department feels it. The TV department feels it. The wrap-up show.
Listen, I won't name names, but everyone was just in disbelief and shaking their head after that summit. And when certain people came on board, it was just, what the
Look,
it was bizarre. It was
the part about the summit that I liked was that Howard was pushing for more guests. And there was a real attitude towards guests before that. Gary would never look for guests, and Howard would not want him to do that. And he used to always shock me. I'm like, hey, this guy's in town. Why aren't we getting them on? But Howard just had this different take. If they want to come on, they know where to find us. And so I enjoyed that part of that summit where Howard was saying, hey, we're going to go out and get the guests for once and have a actual booker for the show. But it was the rest of the stuff that was odd.
Yeah, what were those last days like as you're watching Howard say, yeah, I have an idea. We're going to get rid of Howard TV, but I have an idea. What was it like? Because it happened on the air. He didn't tell anybody, as usual.
Yeah, I mean, we all were shocked. First thing I did is I turned around and looked at Doug, and Doug sort of seemed dumbfounded too. I mean, so we had heard, I had been through probably 5 or 6 contract negotiations, whether it be radio or TV along the way. So I always just assumed that, this is just going to be another one of those negotiations. But when he said it was going away, I still didn't believe it. I sort of was like, he's really negotiating, But then as we heard more, and then Howard took us, had a little brief meeting with us after the show, that it seemed real. And I was like, this doesn't sound good. But I still hoped that someone would come in. I thought, he's doing the radio show. Why wouldn't he want the free money to do the television show? We didn't ask for anything of him. He literally just had to do the show, and we would handle the television part. So I really thought it would come back, and it didn't. And I've heard various reasons for that, but who knows?
So I'll let either of you answer this because it's probably difficult, but it now is being done the exact same way you guys did it. You set the template, and Sirius puts out clips, and it's basically done through Sirius. Why? I mean, my question would honestly be, why didn't they just ask you guys back? Or did you think there was something there that they didn't want this group back? They want to do their own?
No, that's a good question. It did take 3+ years for them to get back and do it. I think there was just like one intern or someone just pressing buttons, and it was like that for a while. The only way I saw it is, and I don't know how else to see it, is the clips on Twitter. And I would call Scott and be like, I can't even watch more than 10 seconds of this. It's just, they're destroying it. It's definitely gotten a lot better since with the clips I've seen. They've definitely put some meat into it and good production quality. But at the beginning, it took years before they had, I think what Scott was saying, we just thought there would be, just like we went from E to in demand, there'd be a seamless transition. And that transition didn't happen. And it took years for anyone to come and pick it up. And that's, I don't know if you could say no one picked it up and Sirius took it over, or I don't know what happened there, but that's what happened.
They had our phone numbers. They knew how to get in touch with us. I'm curious to this day why they didn't, whether it be, I've thought of everything. Was I too political? What did Howard, was he not into the arguing anymore? Did MARCI think we were bad for their culture there? So did we get paid too much? I don't know. It could have been any reason, but they never called. You know, they called for one thing, to help. I'll tell you a story. After we had just left, Gary asked Doug and I to help with the birthday show that was coming up. Howard's big, 60th birthday party, I think. So we had been through those. Doug always ran the whole, practically the guts of the behind the scenes of the show. So he and I went in, took a meeting in the city, and I told him, here's where you're going to want Howard, here's where you're going to want the stage, blah, blah, blah. I told him a bunch of stuff. Doug then went, put all the finances together and said, all right, this is what it's going to take. Then I hear from a camera guy who I know, who talked to my wife and said, you know, Scott asked me to do the birthday show, but I've just been hired by another director. I was like, what? So we call up Gary, and Gary was like, oh, how'd you find out? Like, not, sorry, I should have told you guys. I mean, we had taken these meetings and we budgeted the whole thing and we had worked on it. And it just felt like we're already down because we're looking for work now. And then he just kicked us in the nuts, you know?
Yeah, that's a story that, you know, I moved on. I didn't really look back, but that was the hardest pill to swallow. That was just classless and disgusting. You know, let's not sugarcoat it. That was pathetic and really just unforgivable. And why it was done, I don't know, but I know that didn't just sting. That hurt, and it hurt Scott. It hurt everyone on the TV team. You know, people were just in disbelief. And then to make it even worse, not one person from the TV crew was even invited to the actual party after that classless act. And then on top of that, there were empty seats that they were handing out free tickets on the street to strangers the night of the event. So
yeah, we were told there were no seats left.
That what?
We were told there were no seats left. That's why we couldn't go.
Yeah, and I was told directly from someone why we weren't invited, and it was someone's decision who came on board late and late in the game. I don't know what the vendetta was or what kind of mindset or what kind of insanity was going on where you rationalize and justify not inviting a loyal set of troopers after you just took the gig away from them without even telling. Listen, this is the stuff that people know about. I'm not shedding light. I'm maybe shedding a little more light on it, but these stories are out. You've heard these. That's the truth. Okay. That owed everyone an apology, but of course not, because you know, that's not the way it works over there.
How do you, I mean, Baba Booey's been there forever. He's very loyal to Howard. Do you just chalk it up to that, or do you go, come on, be a human being?
I don't think Gary had anything to do with it.
I'm just saying anything that happens with Gary and just, he's been shit on for so many years, but has a huge house, has beautiful stools in his basement. Is that just what it kind of is? Is that he's just a loyal soldier and he's going to retire happy and wealthy?
He's not going to ruffle any feathers. He's got a great gig. Listen, he's ridden the wave for this long, and you know he's probably close to retirement age. So I get after the next contract, he's probably done. You know,
I don't think Gary was going to go to bat for me anytime soon after the whole sleeping video that Doug really was responsible for. But I took the heat.
I just watched that again I do research here, and the research is watching old clips on YouTube, and that is hilarious. I mean, just some of the stuff that goes on. Now, do you guys watch YouTube and look at some of these old things, or is it, I did it, I don't care, I'm not that big a fan, I'm pissed off, or whatever?
I mean, you know, a lot of people, I'll be on the golf course, and a lot of people ask me Stern stories, and I always come up with the same 4 or 5 stories, and I'm like, so every once in a while, I'll look for something and watch something, and it reminds me. But no, I don't really do a lot of Howard Stern YouTube watching. Because, you know, ultimately I feel like that's partly why the show went away. You know, YouTube killed our job.
YouTube was a big problem. We couldn't keep up with the piracy. And for every show we would get taken down by the legal team, 10 of them would go up, to the point where we'd see a direct correlation with subscriptions starting to go down as the content on YouTube went up. and it was in the infancy of piracy, basically, with people putting so much stuff up on YouTube and stealing. They just couldn't control it.
I could see that, but it's like Napster. I love it. It gives me an outlet here. People steal this show.
So tell me, what did you watch? What did you watch that you enjoyed?
Just of this, I saw you and Jason. Your good Jason stuff, of course. There's the Al Franken arguments there, of course. The Gary saga. There's like 8 hours of that with you, the camera. Because you're right. Then it went into the wrap-up show, and then what he says on the wrap-up show then becomes fodder the next day on the show. So it's funny. Tell me, so these times where Artie, I love Artie, I miss Artie, I ask everybody about Artie, but Scott, tell me about these times when you're watching him fall asleep or you're watching him fight Teddy or Sal. And I mean, did you have sense that there was issues with him, or did you feel weird about showing this, or was it, hey, it's a big party, Artie's laughing at it, it's fun?
I literally had no idea he was doing drugs until after he would say it each time. Then I'd be like, oh, but then the next time I would give him the benefit of the doubt. And again, he must just be tired because he was up all night long. I don't know. But, there became a time when the eyes start rolling into the back of his head sort of stuff. And the eyes, the lids are like half open. And, I had a camera on him. I felt like I had to do my job and capture it, but I felt guilty for it. And the extent that it was funny and he played along, like putting the bed out there so he could take a nap during the interview. Who was being interviewed when he's sleeping there? She's talking about her like...
Was it Avril Lavigne or... She's
talking about an award she won or something, and here's Artie just snoring on the bed. It was so funny. But so the extent we can make fun of it, it was great. But ultimately, it was sad, and Artie was a good friend, and generally the funniest person that worked in that whole 20 years of the show. And I just hope he figures it out, You
don't keep in touch with him, right?
He changes his phone number all the time.
Yeah.
So I'll call him once a year, maybe, when I find a new phone number, and we'll talk for a little while, and then he disappears again. So,
Doug, I was listening again, doing research, but I forgot about this. You met O.J. Simpson on the golf course and asked him to come on the show. I didn't prep you for this story, but again, as I'm doing research, and I'm like, I remember him telling that story. Do you want to relay that here, or do you remember?
I don't think I met OJ on the golf course.
Was it not? Okay, evidently.
No, that's not Doug. That was the guy in L.A. The guy.
Gary Garver.
Who was the guy in Vegas who
Gary Garver
had a fight with?
Oh, Gary Garver?
Yeah, that was Gary Garver.
Yeah, your research sucks, Brad.
Well, I will send you the link of you telling the story, Doug, that I talked to OJ.
I met him at a bar in Tampa when I was down with some friends randomly, and the guy I was with ended up knowing him, and OJ came over and gave him a big hug. It was the most awkward thing ever. It was bizarre. And then he sits down with us, and next thing you know, I'm sitting in a club with, or a bar or whatever it was, with OJ Simpson. It was really bizarre.
The juice. And you see OJ. I think that's that whole time, the early 90s. I was going to ask, Scott, do you have a favorite? I always ask the Jackie era or the Artie era. Do you have, or then the third era, whatever that, the MARCI era, whatever we call it. But
they are two different eras. Jackie was more like there's a party in the studio, and Artie was more like, an SNL funny classic Dan Aykroyd bit. It was just two totally different experiences. I would probably vote for the Artie era, but Jackie was damn close second. I mean, that when Billy West was there and just the howling and the laughing and here's a weird dynamic. Jackie he would write jokes and then put them into a bin that we had a camera up, and then Howard would read it, right? So whenever Howard said something anti-Fred, the first thing Fred would do is he would look over and look in the bin and see if Jackie wrote it. And then he would attack Jackie. He wouldn't come back at Howard. He'd be like, well, Jackie's a drunk.